Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Sandra Reyes. I will be the presenter for today. We will be going over patient flow tracking, actions and events, how to use the patient flow tracking window, and how to set up actions and events for the patient flow tracking window. This presentation is being recorded at this time. We will keep the lines on mute until we finish the recording. Please remember not to put your line on hold, as it will disrupt the training. And at the end of the training, please don't forget to rate the training. As I mentioned, we'll be going over the flow tracking window, how to set up some actions and events for the flow tracking window, and using the patient flow tracking window. I will be jumping from the presentation to the training data set. So some of that information will be recorded as well. Okay, so a brief overview of the patient flow tracking window. Why is the patient flow tracking window important? It is a functionality in the system, a module in the system that is very, very useful for a lot of different reasons. The patient flow tracking window allows for the staff to monitor the location of the patients and where are they at certain times so that they can manage their resources. The way that I always train it is who is in the building. This window is the main utility for this window is to find out, to know who is in the building. Where are your patients? Are they being registered? Did they just arrive? Are they with the provider, or are they done with the provider? Wherever the patient is, you're able to see it from anywhere if you have access to Intergy. So that's one of the things that you could do just from this window. Monitor where the patient is at all times, if it's being kept. The other thing that you could do is that it is a centralized location for your staff to perform a lot of the typical front desk duties, which is register a patient, print information, run eligibility, and things like that. Another thing that it helps you with your workflow. It helps you by using the actions and events. You can actually automate your workflow, generating letters, creating messages, and performing different tasks. You can set up your system in a way that you can do most of it from this window without having to leave it. And finally, and especially for administrators, is a workflow analysis. If you are keeping track and if everybody's following the workflow and are making changes to the events on a timely fashion, then you'll be able to run reports and analyze the information to determine where is it that in your workflow you can find some issues that need to be addressed. Okay, is it at the registration portion? Is it between registration and provider in? Where is it that you're having some lag during your patient visits? So in terms of an analytical tool, is very, very useful as well. And these are just a few of the benefits and the main benefits for using this window. To access the flow tracking window, everybody knows the blue men. They need to check the check-in icon, and that's what displays the patient flow tracking window. And this is what it looks like. And we will be going into the patient training data set in a few minutes. I just wanted you to see, for those of you that are not in Intergy on a regular basis, what the window looks like. The way that the system is keeping the workflow from this window is by utilizing actions and events. What exactly is actions and events in the system in Intergy? So in Intergy, an event is an activity performed by a user. Registration, provider in, labs, any of those activities that are performed during a patient's visits are turned into events. Now, those events can be linked to specific actions, and an action is a function automatically performed by the system. So if you want for the front desk to collect prepayment or to the PreCollect at the time of registration, you can link the PreCollect action to the registration event. Okay, So the event is the activity performed by the user. The action is the automatic function that you want it to happen when that event is being performed. And as we go through some examples, it will be a little bit clearer. Some of the most common or typical event sequence, and again, this is very, very customizable, and it is completely up to the center. Some centers are very, very small, that the only thing that they need is arrive, in, and check out. That's it. I've seen centers that are that small and that they can do away with just a few events. Some centers are very, very big. They have different floors where the patient needs to go from first floor to second floor. So they might arrive the patient on the first floor, and then the patient needs to go to the second floor to see the provider, and they use the patient flow tracking event to keep track of that. So this is very, very customizable. But what I'm showing here are a few of the most common ones. This is the sequence that it will use. So when the patient arrives, this is the code that they will use, arrived, and it means that the patient has signed in for their appointment. Again, this responsible party is completely up to the center. Some centers are huge enough that they have a receptionist area, a front desk, a checkout desk, everything in between. Some centers is the same person signing the patient in, doing registration, checking them out. Okay, so this is just an example. The second event is usually registration after the patient has been signed in. Then in. Now, this in links directly with Intergy EHR, and it's a system event. Okay, as soon as you click in the EHR system, you get a green check mark to let the clinical staff know that the patient is ready to be called to the back. So before the front desk is make sure that the patient is ready for them, they should not enter in unless they're completely sure that the clinical staff is that the patient is ready for the clinical staff. Okay. Some centers use vitals because before the patient sees the provider, they run vitals on that patient. Then they use exam room, and the reason why it's red is because I want to add it. I'm going to show you how to add this event in the system. So once the patient has their vitals taken, then they put the patient in the room. Same thing with this example. Some providers, some centers, they have exam 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and some of them just have exam room, and that's enough for the patient, for the provider to know where the patient is. Doctor in, doctor out. If the doctor orders labs and if they have availability to run labs in that center, then labs will be another event that could be performed. And then once the patient, now for centers that do the checkout and the charge posting and the follow-up, you can have another event in between for checkout and then out. Okay. Now, when it comes to reporting, usually is the wait time is determined from the sign-in event, which in this case we're calling it arrival, to the provider in event. So that will be how you would determine the wait time for a patient. How long is the patient waiting to be seen by the provider? Again, as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat room. Okay, so what is all this means in the Intergy system? So I'm going to go right now into the training data set. As you can see, this is what an usual patient flow tracking looks throughout the day. And again, depending on the size of the center, this list can go all the way down forever, okay? So this is what the patient flow tracking window looks like to you. Now, what can you do with this patient flow tracking window on a daily basis when you're trying to see, to ascertain who is in your building? Well, you can filter by location. In this case, I have a filter by location for the Alashua Community Health Center. If I select another location, I will go into a different setup. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to stay with the Alashua location. Okay, you can also filter by provider. So in this case, if I wanted to only see the patients that are for Dr. 4, then I could also filter it that way. Something that I want to outline here is that you can actually default. Let's say that you are a front desk staff that always works in Alashua and always works with Dr. 4. So you don't want to be doing this click every 5 minutes. How do you set it up? You go into Options, User Preferences, and here type Patient Flow Tracking. You have a couple different options. Actually, it's default. Here it is, default patient check-in location and default check-in provider. So if you're always working on the same location, you're always working with the same provider, it will be good to default those two functionalities. Okay, as you can see, I already defaulted my location in here. Again, how do you access that? Options, User Preferences, and type here default patient location, patient check-in location, and default patient check-in provider. That way you don't have to be changing this all the time. No matter what, you could always filter it back if you need to. Okay? So in this case, I don't want to just see Dr. 4. I want to see all the appointments for today. So those are two filtering options. The next filtering option is Event. Remember what I mentioned to you, that an event is an activity performed by a user. So in this case, for this system, we have a couple of different events, and we have arrival, we have registration, we have patient check-in, we have doctor in, and out is when the patient is out of the system. Let's say that I'm a front desk person and I only want to see all the patients that have arrived. I'm going to filter it here, and I'm going to select that event only. So as you can see, I only have the ones that have arrived, and the other ones are showing up because okay, I will make myself a note as to why is the checkout event displaying. Okay, I shouldn't see this. I should only see arrival and in, and the ones that don't have an event will continue to display. Okay, but this is a good functionality if you want to see all the patients that are still on the registration, what's going on with those patients. This is a good filtering option. Okay. So I'm getting back to my original filter, and right now I'm seeing every event. Another view option is here, these three boxes right here, which are the ones that I use the most. If I want to see patients that I'm still waiting for them to come into the office, I want to highlight uncheck in office and check out. It will only display the ones that I'm waiting to come in. If I only want to see the patients that are in the office, I will make sure to uncheck all of this and leave in office. So these are the patients that I have in the office, and these are the patients that I need to be monitoring as to where they are at the center. And if I want to see how many patients left already, I will leave the ones for checkout. So this is very useful in viewing purposes for an administrator that is trying to monitor how the day is going. Something that is very useful for the front desk that is underutilized, I will say, is for centers that are very, very large, you have this list going all the way down, and it's very, very hard for them to filter. But if the patient comes in, they come in to the front desk, and they tell them, okay, I'm John Doe, and I have an appointment today. The only thing they need to do is the following. They search for the patient, and let me use Abner, Carla Abner. That's easier. So Carla Abner comes to the front desk. She says that she has an appointment. I'm going to find a patient, and it highlights it. It's a little bit hard to see because the only thing it does is it makes the blue a little bit darker. But it does highlight the patient, and it takes you straight there to that patient. Okay, it's very, very useful. Let me try with another patient. Chantal Pope, who also has an appointment. As you can see, it highlights it, makes the blue a little bit darker. So they don't have to be, the way I call it, fishing around in the patient flow tracking for that patient. They just have them right here. Okay? So let's say that this patient just arrived. There's a couple of ways to record an event. The most common one is right-click, record an event, do the drop-down, search for the event, select it, and enter it. You could always type a comment in here for to keep track. Patient, it's late. And click OK. Because of the way the system is set up, when I clicked Arrive, I have the action to display the patient information window in the Appointments tab automatically. So that is the action that is linked to the arrival event. Okay, so now we have Chantal Pope has arrived. But the fastest way to record an event for me and the way that I train it is double click on it. And there it is. It displays the window right away. And as you get to know your codes, I know that registration starts with an R, and it just pops it up, and it does. So the event is registration. And at this time, that event is linked to opening the patient information window to the insurance tab. This is to remind the staff to check patient eligibility when the patient is being registered. Now there is a second action link to this event, registration event, which is to print the registration forms. As you can see here, as soon as I click the registration event, it popped up automatically the patient information window in the insurance tab, and it also popped up the run registration forms to be printed. So if I had a printer linked to this, I would just select it and print it. In this case, I'm not going to do it, so I'm going to cancel it. So now we saw two events that have actions linked to them. Let's say that I made a mistake. This patient has not arrived yet. I can actually right-click and undo the last event. So I'm keeping this patient under arrived. Okay, I have not been able to call them to the registration. Okay, so with that understanding of what actions and events are, and the different sequence of how the centers use it for the workflow. So at this time, I know that two of my patients for today are already left, that I have a patient here on the registration for a very long time, and since 11 a.m., and another one that has been under arrival for since 1:30. So my concern will be these two patients. If I want to hear, another good thing is that you keep the history of everything that has happened during the patient appointment. So for example, this patient already left. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to encounter detail. It keeps track of who did what at what time. The appointment for this patient was at 8:45. They arrived at 10:49. Registration was done after that. The patient was checked in. Vitals were done. Provider went in. Provider went out. They have some labs done, and then they were checked out. So if you want to know exactly where or how long that patient has been here, the encounter detail is a very useful tool. Okay, so now we know what the sequence for this center is. Arrive, and in Arrive, it displays the patient information and scheduling. And registration, in registration, it displays the patient information and it prints the patient registration. Okay, so what I want to show you is how do we set it up. So how do we set up this action and events for it to work to our benefit? Okay, so the way that actions and events get set up, and again you need security access for this following step, is you're going to set up, codes, actions and events. This is the window where you will be setting up your sequence, setting up the actions that you want to be linked to each one of your events, one by one. Okay. Before I go into this, I just want to show you that in the presentation, I have the definitions. Okay. So I'm going to be discussing the different types of action codes that you can create and the different types of events that you can create. But in the presentation, I do have the definitions for you to go back to it later and read. Okay. So here are the action codes. Again, the actions are any automation that you want to do into your system. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a new action. And how do I do that? I'm in actions and events. I am in the actions code, and I want to create a new action. Okay. Be careful as to the codes that you put so that later on you remember how to find them. So in this case, I want to create a message, a patient portal message. Okay. Okay, but before I do that, I want to show you the different options that you have. So here, you already enter your code, you enter the description, and these are the different actions that you have. Intergy, function, and OS call are for system administrators, so you don't have to worry about those. Letters and labels. When you select letters and labels, then you can automate a printing of a form. So if you have a form set up in letters and labels that you want to print when a certain event happens, then you select letter and label. You go to patients or accounts. So I'm going to select patients to display the letters that are under the patients category. And in there, you select the different type of letters that you want to print. So let's say you want to select the general letter. So in this case, you're creating an action to print a letter that is called general patient letter. But that's not what we want to do. The second option is a message, which is the one that I was trying to do. And in this case, you can do a warning, or you could do some information. Let's select information and inform patient how to access the patient portal. Okay, so this is just an info message that will display depending on the event that I'm going to link it to. This is how you will create a message. And patient information. That's the other type of action that you can create. What happens with patient information? So let me do a little bit of refresher. When we're talking about patient information, we're talking about this window. Okay, so the system is giving you the option to open this window automatically to any page and any tab that you need to. Okay, so patient information, and then in here you select the page. Maybe you want them to make sure that the last registration form was scanned, so I'm going to select the imaging. And if imaging had tabs, I guess that's not a good example. Let me select one that has financial. You want them to see the balance for this patient, so you're going to select the financial page. And you want to get them to summary, where they'll see all the information in summary. Okay, so that's one way. In my example, I'm going to stick with the message. Okay, and I'm going to stick with the info message to inform patient on how to access the portal. Okay, I'm actually just going to put portal, that way I remember. Okay, so we just created our first action. But not only you can create an action, but you can actually edit, delete, or deactivate. So I want to edit the one that when I click arrive, it opens patient information directly into the appointments window, into the scheduling page, appointments tab. I don't want it to do that. I want it to display on personal summary page. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the action that is linked to this event. So again, setup, codes, actions, and events. The action that is linked to that event, and now I'm going to take you to events for a second. Events, patient flow, arrival. So in here I have the event. At the bottom I have the action that is linked to it. So the code for that action is patient information. I'm going to come back to action codes. I'm going to look for that code, patient information, and I'm going to edit it. So here is my option. I'm going to leave the same description. I still want it to open in patient information, but I don't want it to open in the scheduling page. I want it to open in the personal page. I'm going to click OK, and I want it to open in the summary tab. Okay, so when I enter arrive for a patient, I want this patient information personal and summary tab to display. I'm going to click save, and it takes effect automatically. Okay, so remember that you can undo an event, so I'm going to undo this event so that I could do this again. And now, and so it's just making a liar out of me. And I think it's because it's not a brand new event. So let me go to John Doe. Nice. Okay. So give me 1 second. I obviously did something wrong. So again, setup, codes, actions and events. I'm updating the patient information event. Patient info in the personal page, in the summary, and I'm just going to double check the patient flow event. And you usually don't have to reset it. For some reason, it's asking me to reset it. But then again, I've been playing with this all day, so give me 1 second. And again, it's making a liar out of me, and I apologize. So I'm going to make a brand new appointment. For Jonathan Alfonso. And let me see if the reason is because I've been doing and undoing events all day long. Sorry about that. So nope. Okay, so this does not happen. So I will figure it out before the end of the day, but this is how you're supposed to set it up. So right now I'm concentrating on the actions. So it's codes, actions, and the action that I edit was display patient information. Since it's not working for me, I honestly just want to delete it. Okay? And deactivate, if you're not sure that you're going to use it again at some later point, you could always deactivate it. Okay, so that's the way that you set up the actions. Now we're going to set up the event. When I was going through the presentation, I told you that I wanted to create a new event. Now, in the actions and events window, let me minimize this. You have the option, you have general events, you have scheduling events. Now, these two categories, general events and scheduling events, they come with the system. You cannot edit them. The only thing that you could do is deactivate. You cannot add to these events. So these are used for completing patient registration. So every time, for example, a general event, every time that you click to register a patient, you want them to print the registration form. So even though you cannot add an event, you could always link actions to it. On the top part of the window, you'll see the event. On the bottom part, you'll see the action that is linked to that event. You also have the system scheduling events. The system comes with this already set up, which is cancel appointment, and one of the most known is no-show. So what happens is when you no-show an appointment, it's already linked to create a task to be sent to somebody to follow up on that appointment. Okay, so general and scheduling you cannot add, but you could definitely not add patient flow events. And the reason for that, again, is because every center is different. Every center has their own flow tracking events that they want to track, that they want to report on, that they want to know where the patient is. Are they in the second floor? Are they in the third floor? Where are they? Are they in the lab, in the pharmacy? So it depends on the center. The one that I was missing from my presentation is exam room. Sorry about that. Exam room. Okay, so we're going to create this event. And in here, I'm in events, I'm in patient flow tracking events, and I'm going to click new I'm going to call it exam room, and actually you have, I can actually, nope, that's as much as I can. So you have 2, 4, 6 characters that you can type in there. And you can type the description that you want. Patient is in exam room, ready for provider. Okay. Class is optional. Most centers don't use it. That is more for reporting purposes. So in this case, we're not going to use it. Alert. Alert is important. When I show you the patient flow tracking, you notice that some of them are in red and some of them are not. Okay. When I created the arrive event, I wanted for it to alert me if it's been more than 15 minutes. So in my center, the one that I set up, I want to make sure that there's no patient waiting longer than 15 minutes to be registered. So the way that you do that is you go into the setup and you set up an alarm. Okay. For this event, I'm not going to put an alarm. I will show you in the arrival. And this one is also kind of controversial. Limit the event to 1 per encounter. I will definitely recommend that check in and check out, or actually arrive and check out, are limit to 1 per encounter. Because when you're running reports, you don't want to find 3 arrivals for the same patient. You want to make sure that your reports are being run from arrive to provider in, and you don't have the patient arrive 3 different times. But, which I found out recently in one of our centers, for example, provider in, provider out, you want them to allow to put them more than once, because in some cases the provider goes in, they put provider in, then a resident goes in or a lab technician goes in, and during that time the provider is not with the patient. So when the provider goes back to the room, they put provider in again. So in that case, you would allow for that event, provider in, to not have a limit. In this case, I don't need to limit this event. But I will definitely say arrive and check out, you should limit those 2 events. At least the first and the last event that you want to run reports by, you should limit those. Okay. So now let me show you the arrive, how I have with an alert. So now we created our first event, patient flow tracking event. But this one we can also edit. So as you can see, I have it for an alert after 15 minutes. So if it's been longer than 15 minutes, the patient flow tracking window is going to turn that appointment red. And this is just a visual aid to find out how long the patient has been waiting. I can change this right now to 30 minutes. And again, this is limit the event to 1 per encounter. I only want 1 arrival per patient per visit so that I can run reports on it. So we created a new event that was exam room, and we edited the arrival. Okay. Now there's another thing that we could do. We could deactivate an event. Let's say that this one is not being used anymore. We could deactivate it. If at a later day you want to reactivate it, you just need to make sure to include inactive events, highlight it, and activate it. Okay. This is good. Why would you activate and deactivate? Well, some centers have seasons, like maybe school, during right before the back to school A lot of patients come in for immunizations, let's say, and you want to create an event for immunizations, and you're only going to use it during that period of time where you have a lot of children come in for immunizations, and then you don't want it to take that much space, so you deactivate it again. So that's a good example of what you would deactivate patient flow tracking event. Okay, I'm just going to leave this one like this. And now that we know what our actions are, something that we want the system to do automatically. Events is something that a user is doing in the system to keep track of the patient appointment. I want to link the event to the action. So let's review the registration event. So as I mentioned to you, the event is on the top, and the information that is linked, the actions that are linked to that event are at the bottom. Okay? So right now we have 2 actions, and you can again link more than one action to that same event. We have 2 actions linked to registration, and we have 1 action linked to in. The action, I'm going to remove this one because I want to show you what it does. So when I click in, the post pre-collect payment window displays. Okay, so I'm going to remove it. So I'm going to link it again. Okay, and since this started to act out on me, let's see. Okay, so these people are arrived. So I'm going to click in, and as you can see, nothing happened. But I want to make sure that when I click in, I get the pre-collect window to pop up. So how do I set it up? Set up codes, actions, and events. I'm going to go to events because I already know that there is a pre-collect action. If not, I will have to create that action, okay? This one is. Actually, it comes with the system. Post pre-collect payment. So that's the action that I'm going to be linking to my event. I'm going to come to events, patient flow events. I'm going to look for in. And as you can see right now, I don't have any actions linked to this. So I'm going to click here at the bottom. You see it says actions. I'm going to click add, and it's going to ask me to look for it. So here it is, post pre-collect payment. I'm going to click OK, and you can see it right here. And again, just because, let me reset. Let me open the window again, and let me check in this patient. And now it works. So the pre-collect window displays. It's asking me to select a journal. And the user didn't have to leave this window to collect the payment. Okay, then I post the payment, I save it, and the patient is ready. Okay, registration. Set up. Codes, actions, and events. I'm going to go to the event for registration. I have 2 events set up. Okay, but remember that I also added a new event that was to display a message. So I want to link that. I also added an action to display a message. I'm going to link that action. Actually, I'm going to link that action to arrival. because Arrival doesn't have an event right now, and I want to make sure that as soon as the patient comes in, they go to the patient, hey, have you registered in the patient portal? So to the Arrival, I'm going to add the portal message that I created earlier. So now I have the event linked to that action. And I have the patients that are ready to come in. And here's my pop-up. Inform patient on how to access the portal. And again, you can get a lot more detail on these messages. You can put a warning instead of information, warning, and you could do a lot more things with this. Whatever you think will benefit your front desk from getting directly from here as soon as they click any of these events, then you should link it. We usually have a lot of questions, and you can wait until I open the line for questions, but we usually have a lot of questions on this. How do I set up an event to link to an action? Okay, so right now I just want you to keep in mind that you need to go to Setup, Codes, Actions, and Events. You need to set up your actions, which is the automatic functionality that you want to set up. And then you go to Events, and you link it. You highlight the event that you want to edit, and you add the action that you need. Okay? Now, even though we're not talking about other events, we're only talking about patient flow tracking events, I do want to highlight the scheduling event of no-show, because that's something that you can actually do from this window as well, from the patient flow tracking window. So as you can see, the system already comes, and if you don't have it, you can set it up. When you no-show an appointment, it displays a task for you to send. So if you don't have it set up, come to the scheduling events, highlight the no-show appointment. This action comes with the system already. So the only thing that you need to look for is the new CTM task to link it. Okay? So now we know what actions and events are. Okay, we know how to set up an action. We know how to add an event and how to link the two. Okay. And again, you can populate letters and labels, you can create a message, or you can open the patient information window in different pages. Okay? So now let's go over using the patient flow tracking window. Now that we have it set up and that we have all of our systems set up, now we're going to learn how to use it. As you can see in the patient flow tracking window, there are different colors. You have the blue for schedule appointments without an event. Once the patient arrives, you have the light beige. And once the patient leaves the office, you have the gray color. So as you can see, the font changes to color. And the best way to kind of show you this, again, remember that you can filter this view. This is the blue. If the patients are in the office, you have the light yellow or beige. And in the white with gray is when the patient has left. Okay, so that's the color coding. When you highlight a patient, then it becomes bright yellow. That's the patient that you're working with. Okay, that's the patient that you're working with. So what are the different columns? In the standard view that you have here in this column, you have the appointment time. And if the patient has more than one appointment, you will see it here. So as we can tell here, Mary Poppins has 2 appointments today. Now, there's a couple of things that you could do. You could view, you see right here at the bottom of the window, you can actually view the appointments for only and only this patient. So this patient had at 9:30 an appointment with one doctor, and at 2 p.m. had an appointment with another doctor. And the reason why the column chose 2 is because, in fact, they had 2 appointments today. This is useful for centers that have different services, maybe behavioral health and family, or OBGYN, and no, that's a bad example, dental, and sometimes they track dental appointments here. So you could see the different appointments for that patient. Okay. The third column is, it was one of the most recent columns in the updates, is if you're confirming an appointment. So some centers do the phone confirmation manually. They call the patient and they confirm the appointment. So if they do it now, the system allows them to confirm the appointment in the system. How do you do that? You right-click, confirm appointment, and then that's how the C is displayed. If that appointment is confirmed, then you'll see it. Now, the other thing that you'll see is in blue who confirmed it and the date that it was confirmed. The next column is the patient's name, the reason for the appointment, and again, these are depending on your system setup, the provider, the location for that appointment, if they have an encounter, the insurance plans that they have, the patient, the reason, the encounter, and the event. So where are they in their appointment? Are they in? Are they waiting to? Let me change a few of this. One is in vitals. One is in the lab. One is with the provider. One just arrived. Okay. And how long and at what time was that event recorded? So this is the standard view, but there's other options that you have here in this display. Here you can view provider and location. So that's the option, the display option that you have. So here by clicking display, you'll make that change. You can view provider and room. Now, why would room be important? A lot of times if you're scheduling lab appointments and in the system you created a different room for those appointments, that's when this will be useful. The next option is recent description. So maybe it's a follow-up and it's an annual follow-up, or you have a specific reasons. Like for example, here it says you're not sure what WPHI is. So then you display the recent description and then it clearly states work physical. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why you will use this display. Now, the other one is important, the AEV, Automatic Eligibility Verification. So if you have your system set up to run eligibility automatically to a day or two prior to the appointment, you will see that information here. I will say you have to have it. You want to make sure that the eligibility is being run. So make sure that you do have this option displayed in every system. Okay. And finally, what is displaying right now is at what time the last event started. So for example, I want to know why this patient has been here so long. I'm going to right click. I'm going to do encounter detail. And the only thing that I know is that this user entered the patient as registered as 11/23 and has not made any changes. Okay, so I'm sorry. And that happened at 11:23 a.m. Okay, and that's what is displaying. At what time does this last event started? But there's another way to display it. Display elapsed time. So this way is telling me there's been 4 hours since this event was changed. It's been 4 hours since this event was changed. It's been 22 minutes since this event was last changed. Okay, and this two just happened. So whatever is more useful, and it actually is telling you that this patient is late for their appointment. So that's another useful tool. For the most part, I see everybody leaving it at the start time. Okay, so that is the different displays and columns in the patient flow tracking window. Okay. Now, that's not all that you could do in the flow tracking window. Just change events and change the viewing options. No, there's a lot more things that you could do. You have the different menus. So you could start by using the menus. The actions menu has make selected patient. So instead of going and researching for that patient, you highlight the patient, you make them selected, and when you click on the blue man, that patient is the first patient to display. So it saves you 1 or 2 clicks. Okay. The other options are you can record an event from here, so that this is the third way that you can record an event. Like I said, you can do right click, you can do double click, or you can do it from here. You can set up a no-show from here. The reason why it's not giving you the option is because I'm highlighting an appointment that already is occurring. You can print an encounter. Now we're not in the paper ages anymore, but for some reason you need to print an encounter, you still have that option in here. You can cancel an appointment. You can undo last event, new encounter. And this one is a very useful one. You don't want to, let's say that you're trying to find out what happened last week. And I'm not going to have a lot of information, but you're going to go actions, set date, and you're going to go to last week. And it's going to give you the information of what happened last week. And again, I'm in the training data set, so I'm not going to find anything. But this is very useful when you're trying to find out if they are reconciling no-shows or anything about an encounter. You can always set date, and it takes you to whatever day you want, and you can see what happened on that day. In this case, I'm going to go back to today. Okay, and I'm back on today's date, and the way that you see it is here in the patient flow tracking. It tells you what day you're looking at. And this, you can only do it from the actions menu. And you can always click refresh. As you know, this window is changing constantly. Constantly, patients are changing, are moving. So F5 is your best friend when it comes to this window. You also have the option here to refresh from the actions window. Okay. You have some other resource options, but they're not set up right now, so there's no need. Okay. From the patient window, you can view the appointment detail. Now I have to make sure that I highlight a patient. Appointment detail. It just gives you the information, the patient, the notes that you have. encounter details, notes, eligibility, summary. Summary is a useful one. When you click summary and you go to coverage, a lot of times you can see what, and this patient doesn't have any insurance, what the insurance coverage is for that patient. So you go to coverage here, and it tells you what is the copay for the standard visit, the specialist visit. This does not take away from looking at the eligibility. It's just a tool that if you have available, you could always look at. So it's looking at the summary and the coverage tab. Display, we already reviewed the different options, help menu, and close. But very rarely users go to these menus. Why? Because all of those options and more are here in right click. So when you right click, you make the patient selected. You can record an event. In this case, I'm going to no-show this appointment. It will give you a warning. You're going to click yes. Remember, the no-show event is linked to the action that says open a new task window. So here it is. As soon as I click no-show, it opened the task so that I can send it to another user for review. And if you have the task type set up as no-show, it displays, it has the patient, and the task has been sent, and the appointment has been set up as no-show. Okay. Registration. As you can see, this patient is fully registered. How do I know? Because I don't have any warnings. If I highlight here, it tells me that the registration for this patient is incomplete. So if I highlight of a patient that is registered already, I do not have the option to register them from here. But if the patient is not fully registered, then the option appears, and I can register that patient straight from this window. Okay, the window displays, and I just go through all the registration steps one by one. This is very useful if you use quick registration for new patients. So when you come here into your patient flow tracking window, you're going to see that the registration is incomplete. Don't select and go to the blue men and go back and do that. No, just from here, highlight the patient, click register, and continue the registration. You have not left the window. Again, this will only be available if the patient registration is incomplete. Okay, view today for patient. Again, you're not seeing it available here, but if I go to, where did my Mary Poppins go? It looks like I canceled or finished one of my appointments. So I'm going to create another appointment for Mary Poppins just because I want to show you this. Okay, so Mary Poppins is coming back again for Dr. For. Oh, I know show her appointment. That's what I did. Okay, so I know show her, but now she wants to see the provider. Okay, so F5. Okay, there it is. So I know that Mary Poppins has 2 appointments, and I want to see her appointments. So I could either view them from here, or the option to view today for patient happens, displays here. and it takes me to the 2 appointments that this patient has. Again, it's not available in any other patient because that's the only patient that has 2 appointments for today. So you're going to say view today for patient is not available. View today for patient is available because Mary Poppins has 2 appointments for today. Okay. We already went over undo last event. Maybe you were going to start the registration for this patient, but you were called out for something else. Then you could always undo that event. And again, you can do the appointment detail. One that I use a lot is the encounter detail because I want to see, okay, who was the last patient that registered or that arrived this patient, or what is happening with this patient. Okay, this one is the one that you see the entire history. I want to see who did the vitals for this patient. I want to see who did the registration for this patient. So that is the encounter detail. Right click, encounter detail. So from here, there are other activities that you can do. You can view notes for this patient, and at the same time, you can create new notes. So for entering a note for a patient, you don't need to leave this window. You just right-click on Notes and add a note. Second thing that you could do is view the alerts for this patient and create an alert. Patient is hard of hearing. And if you have some of them already set up, you can definitely set them up. You can just select them. Hospital admission, let's put something here. Okay, I'm just adding an alert for this patient, and I'm closing. Right here from this window. Eligibility, very, very important. Again, you don't need to leave the window. You just do eligibility. You review the coverage for the patient. Here is giving me standard visit information, specialist information, but I want to actually see the report. Let me remind you that I'm in the training data set, so I'm not going to be able to see anything. But if I was in your center, I will come here, I will select the insurance, and I will click verify, and I will run the report. Let me just see if I at least get an error display. Remember to select the center, code 98, for a professional physician visit office. The system will try to read, and of course we're not set up, but it will display. Again, I did not leave the window. It's right-click, eligibility. Summary is also a very useful tool. It gives you all the patient information, and anything that is underlined in Intergy, in case you didn't know, is a hyperlink. So if you want to see when was the consent expire, you can just do the hyperlink. You want to see who the provider is and change or update anything on that provider. So anything that has an underline is a hyperlink. Now, if you're just adding an email, look, you don't even need to leave this window. You just click the hyperlink, and it opens it for you to send an email. Well, this is if the patient is set up to receive emails and you have the email for the patient, you can actually send messages, but we will discuss that for the patients, mostly for the centers that are already utilizing the Greenway functionalities for patient portal. Okay, so you can send an email directly from here. You can review the account directly from here. You can review the guarantor directly from here. You can actually edit the guarantor directly from here. So there's a lot of things that you can go directly from this window without having to leave it. So we just updated a couple of things on the patient summary, and the final is PreCollect. Now, PreCollect, some centers used to set it up as an event. So after registration, they will change the event to PreCollect so that they would populate that PreCollect window. I don't think it's needed because by right-clicking, you can just select the PreCollect window and it displays the PreCollect window. For me, that's just easier because then the staff knows when they're ready to collect that payment and they do it. So just as a review, since I'm able to right-click and do the PreCollect, that means that when I'm having my end event, I don't need for the PreCollect window to display again. So I'm going to go back to Setup, Codes, Actions and Events. I'm going to go to my Patient Flow Tracking event by clicking on Events. I'm going to look for my end event. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to remove this action because I no longer need it. Why? Because the users can do it directly by right-clicking. Okay? So that's one of the reasons why I don't think that action needs to be linked to that event. Okay? Always do the help. It has a lot of videos. It has a lot of information in there. And I have some extras for you in the presentation, which are, so I have the definitions here, but the extras are keyboard navigation keys. I already told you about refresh, that you just click F5 and it refreshes. But let's say that you need to undo the last event. Control 3 works for that one. So if you get familiar with the keyboard shortcuts, you can actually do this a lot faster. Now, record an event for a patient. Control 1. This is what everybody's doing in every day. So let's go back to here. And I'm going to record an event. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to click Control 1. And it opens the window. So that is the fourth way how you can record an event. Control 1. So just so that you can have some extras, I have a whole bunch of keyboard navigation shortcuts. Well, actually, these ones that and these ones that I found for you to use in Intergy from the flow tracking event. Remember that I told you that I use display encounter detail a lot, so I can use Control C. Control C, and there it is. So if you're one of those people that like keyboard shortcuts, I am giving you more than enough in the presentation for you to play with. Okay? Display provider and location, reason description, so you can change the different displays. I highlighted F5 because that's just one of the most useful ones. This one, mark the patient as no-show, Control 2. Okay, so we have a no-show here, Control 2. This appointment will be marked as a no-show. Continue, yes. Remember the action that we have linked to no-shows. Create a new task, and there it displays. So I hope you have fun with all the different keyboard shortcuts that I'm sharing with you. Okay? And that's what I have for you, but I'm opening the line so that you can ask me the different questions, and maybe you can try a lot of different scenarios, because I know that this is also tricky, and as you can see, sometimes you think it's supposed to work one way and it works another. Okay, so I'm about to open the lines. Please remain on the line for at least 15 more minutes, and I'll open the poll right after that. Thank you.